Welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. Delighted that you're here with us. We got Jeannie's voice in there for a second, and delighted that you're here. We're still working with a few little wrinkles in the app, but rocking forward, and delighted that you're here to be with us. Dawn, welcome. We're still working on a few little wrinkles around getting into the show and making the transition. He's actually over taking care of Ryan and Lincoln today, so I'm here on my own and learning how to do. So, Dawn, you're with us. Any thoughts from you today, sir? If so, push the talk button. Otherwise, I'm going to move forward. I've picked out a Course in Miracles lesson to talk about today, and it's one of my favorite old lessons. It's got some what I can consider to be some humorous thoughts in it, as how carbon-based memory operates, and so we'll be going into the lesson from A Course in Miracle on the unforgiving mind. And that particular lesson happens to be one of my old favorites. And delighted that you're here to share this space with us. So the unforgiving mind, let's look into this idea of carbon-based memory versus the mind, carbon-based memory functioning as a false mind compared to the real mind, the mind of our human beingness entering into our lives. And, you know, under stress, remember, one does what the power person did to them that they hated the most. That's one of the basic rules of unresolved power person dynamics. So if you look at the behavior that one did under stress, that wanted to inflict on others, then you know exactly what your wound is. You know exactly what the root. If under stress, every time it happens, you want to do this. You want to leave, you want to yell, you want to disappear, whatever it happens to be. That's the wound that needs to be addressed. That's carbon-based memory playing out whatever the generational pattern is. And that becomes the basic principle of operation in an unforgiving mind. So this is lesson 121 from the course. If you want to look it up, if you just jump on your web server, if you don't have the book there, go into a web browser and type in ACIM lesson 121. Forgiveness is the key to happiness, and you'll find this lesson. And the lesson starts out, gives us, and before I start into it, I'll once more just ask if anybody that's with us has any questions, anything you'd like to share. Then we'll open the floor for questions. Otherwise, I'll rock on. And anywhere as I'm going through this that you have a question, please just push the talk button or the call button. Remembering that if you got a text message and you just hit the link in the text message, that takes you to a web page where you can listen to the show. But that doesn't open the app and put you into the show so that you can talk to us, so we can have a two-way conversation. So if you've gone into the show or listening to the show just on a web page, go to your app in your phone, open the Needle app, and then go to your favorites, Michael Ryce, Mind Shifters Radio. And then if you have any questions, all you have to do is push the call button, and then it'll ask you once again to push it, and then we'll be having a conversation. So if you push that call button, I'll get a signal here that tells me that you want to say something. Or if you have any comments, you can also write in the chat room. So be delighted to hear from you. So if you find yourself in the behavior pattern with the inclination to do what your power person did to you that you hated the most, which is what under stress the non-being mind will always counsel us to do. The Course offers, here's the answer to your search for peace. Here's the key to meaning in a world that seems to make no sense. Now, why does the world of perception make no sense? Because the world perception, everything that comes from carbon-based memory, by definition, is stored in memory. If it's stored in memory, obviously it's from the past. If you load a goal that causes your past, the information stored in your mind from the past, to bring a certain quality of reality forward, then your perceptual world is going to be filled with an image based on what is held in your mind from the past. And there's no future in the past. There's no sensibility in that past. So this particular lesson in the Course talks about how that world just makes no sense. Why? Because it was created by you. Remember the lesson we've talked about so many times. What is the world? And if you haven't watched that lesson, please jump on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube, type in Michael Ryce, one word, Michaelryce, and look for the lesson, What is the World, from A Course in Miracles. And that lesson very simply talks about the world that the Course aims forgiveness at. And it says the world is false perception. It is born of error. It was created by you to take the place of what the Creator gave you in creation. So when you realize that all it is the past rehashed, if I load this goal about you, if I load a goal for you to, take care of me, then my mind's going to build a particular perceptual construct. If you're not, in my perception, taking care of me, then it's probably going to be some form of hostility or fear-based perceptual reality that I have that holds to blame. And so if I change that goal, for you to go away, and there you are in my face, now you've frustrated that goal, I'm going to have a whole different gathering of thought disorders that my mind uses to build this construct that I think is about you, but is really showing up from the inside of my eyeballs. So how could that world possibly make sense? So again, in this lesson on forgiveness is the key to happiness, here's the key: meaning in a world that makes no sense. How can it make sense except from the context of the errors from which it was created, or we should say for which it was made? So the lesson goes on to say, here's the way to safety in apparent dangers that appear to threaten you at every turn and bring uncertainty to all your hopes of ever finding quietness and peace. Here, the end of all uncertainty is ensured at last. Why? Because you are, through forgiveness, collapsing the attack defense cycle of your own mind. Remember, your feelings, your emotions, what people usually call feelings, are simply reflections of the activity of energies within your physiology. They are not reflections of what's going on in the world. Something happens in the world, resonates something in your mind, or what you call your mind, carbon-based memory, and those sensations, those emotions, are caused by what's moving inside of you. So when you apply forgiveness, a la first century Aramaic Yeshua, the opposite of what the world teaches. We're not going to ever suggest you ever forgive anything. Please never forgive yourself, never forgive anybody for anything. Pardon, if you will. The act of pardoning someone is what the world calls forgiveness, but letting you off the hook. Let's say you did something really ridiculous, crazy, insane, outrageous, illegal, immoral, terrible. I don't want to forgive you for that, but I choose to pardon you. And if your behavior resonated some form of pain in me, then my mind generated a world based in my unresolved pain. When I apply forgiveness, I collapse that internal self imposed attack defense cycle, the circular reasoning upon which what we call seeing rests. And then here's kind of my favorite part of this lesson. It talks about the unforgiving mind. The unforgiving mind is full of fear and offers love no room to be itself, no place where it can spread its wings in peace and soar above the turmoil of the world. And remember that when it talks about soaring above the turmoil is in the internally generated world of perception. Again, what is the world? The world is false perception. The only world that the Course aims forgiveness at is the one between your ears, the one generated out of carbon-based memory. Forgiveness is never aimed at Bill or Harry or Mary or Joe or Hortense or yourself. Pardoning, yes. Forgiveness, no. Forgiveness is always and solely aimed at the constructs of your mind. So the unforgiving mind is sad, without hope of respite and release from pain. Why is that? Because its emotions, called feelings, are both based on its own dissociated thought disorders. So why does it seem hopeless? Because we're applying it, we're saying, oh, if you change, I wouldn't have to feel this. It doesn't matter whether they change or not. You're only feeling what's moving in your own mind and in your own physiology. And when people say, you look at the title of my book, why is this happening to me again? This is happening to me again because it's still inside of me. Unresolved power person dynamics literally run the whole world. The unforgiving mind suffers and abides in mystery. Now, I would put in brackets in front of that idea from this lesson, self-inflicted misery. Sure of somebody coming up and punching you in the nose, actually doing a physical assault. Everything that someone does that you say, that hurt me, let's think about it. I'm on the phone with someone. They're on the other side of the world, and they say something that resonates one of my unresolved power person dynamics. And I say to them, what you said really hurt me. I'm hurting right now. Okay, I understand and I hear that you're hurting, but I I promise you, someone on the other side of the world forcing air through their voice box, which causes air molecules to move, which causes a little plastic speaker in their phone to vibrate, or microphone, pardon me, in their phone to vibrate. And that vibration causes an electrical signal in the phone. That electrical signal is combined with a carrier signal that sends it to an antenna over there in Timbuk 3. That frequency transmitted from that antenna to another shows up in the city you're in America. It's received by your phone. Your phone decodes that frequency and causes a little plastic speaker to vibrate. Now, if you think that little plastic speaker in your phone is causing you pain, please get logical, think again. A little plastic speaker in your phone can't cause you pain, but remember the basic lesson in the Course? I've given this all the meaning it has for me. If that little plastic speaker vibrates air molecules and transmits that frequency to my ear, which causes my eardrum to vibrate, and that movement of bones causes an electrical signal to happen in my brain, and that resonates something that I hold in the way of unresolved pain in me, to pretend that it's caused by that person on the other side of the world is just plain silly. All misery and pain. Again, there is a thing in the world of physical attack, or what we call the physical. We're not talking about that right now. We're talking about what most people do their suffering over, and that's you made me mad, you made me sad, you made me afraid, you hurt me, what you said, what you did really caused me a lot of pain. No, if you're in misery, it's self inflicted. So, this unforgiving mind, the Course says, suffers and abides in self inflicted misery, peering about in darkness, seeing not. Remember that when your brain generates pictures and puts them on the inside of your eyeballs, you're not seeing, you're perceiving what your mind is showing you. But the one peering about in darkness, seeing not, yet certain the danger is lurking there. The unforgiving mind, this lesson talks about, is torn with doubt, confused about itself. Why would one be confused about themselves? Because its projection of itself based in unresolved power person dynamics, and the message is believed to be true because they came from their God, i.e., their power person. That's all this person sees. That's the data, when resonated into activity, that produces one's brain's image of oneself. Remember the lesson from the Course that talks about we see nothing but our own thoughts projected outward or on the inside of our own eyeballs, believing that we're looking out into the real world. Well, the truth is, what we're looking at is our own thought disorders converted into pictures. The pictures are internal to the mind, generated by the mind, and showing on the screen of the inside of our eyeballs. We think we're looking out into the world at that, but you've never seen anything through your eye. You can't see through your eye. Light energy comes in, brings information in, yes, but like any other antenna, I can't pull the wires off the back of my TV and look inside of them and look out around the neighborhood through the antenna that's on my roof. You can't look out through your eyes. You've never seen with your eyes. Everything that you see with your brain. And so if we're in pain, yes, that person on the other side of the world who spoke into their telephone, who set a vibration up, brought forward what were they called words, transmitted those words here, and the telephone replicated that frequency. But that frequency can't hurt me. But if I hold thought disorders that are of a disintegrative nature, energy patterns that are off the mark, those words or those frequencies coming out of the speaker on my phone can resonate in my mind that which my power person inflicted on me that I bought into. And I will form pictures of a world that I think is out there, but they're inside of me. And that leaves us, as this lesson goes on to say, afraid and angry, weak and blustering, afraid to go ahead, afraid to stay, afraid to waken, afraid to sleep, afraid of every sound, yet more afraid of stillness, terrified of darkness, yet more terrified at the approach of light. The thing, most of what happens in people's lives that they think they have fear about is nothing but a picture generated by their mind. I remember some of you have been to Heartland, you know, the building down the hill called Happiness. It still has most of the buildings we've removed the kitchen, but that one still has a kitchen. And I remember there was a couple who were staying in that building, and the woman in the couple got up one night to go and get a drink of water. And as she went into the kitchen, she saw a huge rat on the counter. screamed, went back into the bedroom, and that was it. When she got up in the morning, she went back into the kitchen very carefully, and there on the table was a brown towel that her brain turned into a rat. It was still there. What can the unforgiving mind? If fear shows up, and again, there are situations that are physiologically dangerous, but if that's not what's happening, everything that's perceived by the mind is collapsible, can be removed. But if we refuse to do it, this lesson goes on to say, what can the unforgiving mind perceive but its own damnation? And its damnation is of itself. What can it behold except the proof that its sins are real? Remembering that that word sin, when it's used in this context in the course and anywhere in this work, that we're referring to the Aramaic meaning of that word sin, not the Greek monstrosity that we've been beat over the head with by those who want to keep us in fear. But recognizing over the years, this is probably the most uh, acknowledged relief that people have shared with me who've touched into this work, and it is understanding the Aramaic definition of the word sin. And the word sin in Aramaic is an archery term that means off the mark. So, what can this unforgiving mind behold except proof that all its sins are real? Every message given by the power person, you know, when the child is confronted with the power person, whatever messages are delivered, and those messages start. We've actually got a chart, and maybe I'll see if Jeannie can put it in the notes for today. The chart on the devolution from being through the thought disorders of hostility and fear. The unforgiving mind sees no mistakes, but only sins. It looks upon a world with sightless eyes. And be clear here that the Course is saying eyes are sightless. They're probably one of the biggest lies any of us have ever been confronted. I mean, we say it. One of the things that we've done with Aria Rain and we'll be doing with Lincoln Elias as he grows is we've taught her that reality is the output of her mind. And we created a game years ago with Aria. She was probably 2.5 or 3 when we started to play this game. And that was, we taught her that reality is the output of the mind. And at about 3.5, one day she was watching a video that mentioned seeing things. And she turns to me and says, "Oh, Papa, they don't understand what they're saying, do they? We see with our mind, not with our eyes." So we invented this game, and we took, she had done a piece of art, and she told me what it was. And I said, "Well, that's not what I see there. I see," and I don't even remember what the piece of art was. It was a drawing of a snowman or whatever it was. I don't recall. But I told her what I saw. And then we started to talk about reality. So your mind organizes itself in a way that it thinks it's this, and my mind sees that. And we turned that into the game of, so now, what other realities can we make up about this? And that particular day when we kind of invented that game together, we probably spent 30 minutes going back and forth. Jeannie was actually driving the car, and Ari and I were sitting in the back seat. And, we all started to make up realities for what we were seeing. So we can teach our children that we're not seeing with our eyes, we're seeing with our brain. And the only things we can see with our brain are things that are reflections of the content of our brain or our carbon-based memory system. And we have the option, should we choose to do it, to confront those things that are based in hostility or fear and remove them. That's called forgiveness. But if we refuse to do that, what happens? This lesson goes on. And I think it's actually kind of humorous the way it speaks of it, but it's very instructive. The unforgiving mind looks upon a world with sightless eyes and shrieks as it beholds its own projections rising to attack its miserable parody of life. It wants to live, yet wishes it were dead. It wants forgiveness, yet it sees no hope. Why no hope? Because it thinks that forgiveness is about being let off the hook for its quote unquote perceived sins. Once you recognize that, you'll never ask for forgiveness again. You'll never offer forgiveness again. If I have misery moving inside of me, if I inflict that miserably, horribly on you, there's nothing for me to be forgiven for. Pardoned? Yes, perhaps. But forgiveness will be the act of me going inside myself and removing the root of my misery, removing the root of my aberrant behavior. But the unforgiving mind, the subsequent lenses, it wants escape, yet can conceive of none because it sees the sinful everywhere. Why does it, and put the word see there in quotes, why does it see the sinful everywhere? Because those energies that are off the mark in its own mind is what literally is converted by the mind into the world of pictures, into the world that it sees. So anytime you think you see something to be upset about, don't believe your lying eyes. This is where it's really a very powerful instruction. If your mind is showing you something based in hostility or fear, it's showing you something based in corrupt data. And if it's a picture of someone else or a picture of yourself in the mirror, it's a lie. Everything that comes into perception that's tagged with any form of hostility or fear is corrupt data and therefore a lie. And the beauty of that is when you understand forgiveness, you can collapse those lies, every one of them. Doesn't matter how many generations have been going on in your bloodline. Doesn't matter how deep the assault was to the child. Doesn't matter how horrific the situation was for the child of 2 or 3 that had to put up with the alcoholic or the sex abuser or the cheater or the whatever the power person was. But until the root of that is exposed and removed, and it seems there's no escape because it cannot conceive of escape from its own projections because what it quote unquote thinks it sees comes out of the unresolved energies that need to be forgiven within itself. Hence, the lesson goes on to say, the unforgiving mind is in despair, without prospect of a future, which can offer anything but more despair. And of course, what will that unforgiving mind do? It will project its despair into its brain's image of every circumstance or situation that does not meet its goals. And its goals will by and large be rooted in the desire for a different behavior from the power person. And that's what leads to despair. So again, this lesson talks about the unforgiving mind is in despair without the prospect of a future which can offer anything but more despair. Yet it regards its judgment of the world as irreversible. And you know what? Its judgment is irreversible. It's absolute. As long as it holds to that thought disorder, it's going to generate a picture painted on the inside of its eyeballs, and that's until the energetic patterns underneath that are exposed to love and dissolve, that's permanent. It's not reversible until the thought disorders that literally, remember yesterday we talked about I can't go into my television set and find any pictures or any sound. I went in with a microscope and I went in with all the tools and meters, and there was not one picture or one sound until I looked at the screen. Well, why can't I see the pictures and the sound inside the wires and the resistors and all the circuits and such and things? Because there's nothing there but information. It's not until the information is converted to pictures that I can see the picture on the screen and hear the sound. Your mind works in precisely the same way. It's not until what is stored in the cell as information is resonated into activity by circumstances in the world and then driven by a goal or recruited into activity, resonated into activity by a goal, that a picture appears, and the picture is generated by my mind. So when I judge the world as that's the way it is, then this lesson becomes very logical when you understand that. It says, oh, it regards its judgment of the world as irreversible and does not see it has condemned itself to this despair. It thinks it cannot change, for what it see bears witness that its judgment is correct. It does not act because it thinks it knows. It does not question, certain it is right. And, I mean, if I quote unquote see it with my eyes, obviously it must be true. But the truth is, what I see with my eyes is a picture generated out of thought disorders called into activity by a goal that I hold for my object of attention in the world. And remember that in Aramaic, the word forgive is shabag, and the word shabag or shabak in Aramaic means to cancel. When I cancel the goal that causes my mind to organize my thought disorders into a picture about somebody else, my pain is caused, the sensation of pain is caused by the movement of those thought disorders, quote unquote sins, in my tissue structure. And my tissue structure is saying, get that out of here. Ouch, that hurts. That's why in one given situation, your pain may be in your calf muscle. The next situation, it might be in your gut. The next one, it might be in your head. That's the part of the biocomputer that the information, the disintegrative, the quote unquote sin energy, the energy that's off the mark, is stored. But the mind who sees this picture painted on the inside of its eyeballs does not ask because it thinks it knows. It does not question certain it is right. And, looking at all the conflicts that are going on within our culture right now, everybody who has unresolved pain in themselves that has been called into play by the goals they have for other people in the society thinks they know that their upset, their disturbance, and their pain is caused by someone else. Hence, as this lesson says, it does not question, certain it's right. Forgiveness is acquired. You have to be willing to go for the dissolution of the disintegrative or the sin energy held within your mind. There has to be a willingness to say, I've been here 87 different times with 42 different people. And you can count up. Gee, I remember when I was 5 and wow, this happened. And I remember when I was 9, it happened again. And I remember when I was 11, it happened again. And then when I was 15 and when I was 18, and then with that girlfriend or boyfriend when I was 22, and then at 25, and again, there's a book about this, by the way. You can download it free from our website. I wrote the book. Why is this happening to me again? I can remember when I was first working on that book, I was in Fort Lauderdale. This goes back 35, 38 years ago. And I was working on the book, and the workshop, which we now call Why Is This Happening to Me Again, was originally called The Miracle of Forgiveness. Like, whoopee. And there was actually a magazine, a singles magazine in Fort Lauderdale, and they contacted me. They'd heard about the work I was doing with forgiveness and relationships, healing through relationships. And they contacted me and asked if I would do an article on for their magazine. And I wrote, and when I write, I'm really slow. I mean, I write, I rewrite, I rewrite, and I rewrite, and I rewrite, and then I rewrite again. That's why, if you read my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? Most people give me the feedback like, geez, each paragraph's got more information than most books have in a whole chapter. That's just the way I write. But I remember I was sitting, some of you might remember Angie Nerber, little Italian lady who got into this work, used to travel with me way back, like decades ago in Fort Lauderdale. I remember sitting at the kitchen table and I was rewriting the article, and the title I had given to the article without really thinking about it was, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And I can remember sitting there and I'm re-editing the article, and all of a sudden it struck me. It's like, oh, that's the name of the workshop. It's not, the miracle of forgiveness. It's, why is this happening to me again? Why are you saying to yourself, why can't I escape this? Because it's inside of you. And it's your mind that makes pictures painted on the interior of your walls that makes it look like it's outside of you. It is a giant deception. That's why, as I said yesterday, one of my favorite new quotes is from Richard Feynman, the Nobel Prize winning physicist, who says, we have to bend over backwards to question ourselves because our ability to deceive ourselves is so ingrained. So if you wonder why people aren't changing their mind, would you present logic of this is what's really happening in the political scene? If you wonder why they're not going, oh, wow, yeah, I see that. I got it. It's because forgiveness, as this lesson says, is acquired. It is not inherent in the mind, which cannot sin. As sin is an idea you taught yourself, forgiveness must be learned by you as well, but from a teacher other than yourself. Keep having a conversation with people about how perception, if you're wondering why the people around you aren't changing, they're not changing because forgiveness, as this lesson says, is not inherent in the mind. It has to be learned. But the mind can't teach itself. All the mind can do is replicate whatever's in it. That's the essence of the why is this happening to me again principle. Oh, it can switch it into 1,000 different forms. It can make it look different today than it looked yesterday, than it looked 2 years ago or 10 years ago, but it's the same basic underlying power person dynamic that replicates itself. So forgiveness, as this lesson says, must be learned by you as well, but from a teacher other than yourself, who represents the other self in you, that is the true self. That's the capitalist self, you'll notice in this lesson. Through him or her, you learn to forgive, that is, remove the self you think you made. Remember that forgiveness is about removal. It's not about letting anybody off the hook. So and it's interesting if you go back into the Aramaic, every time that the Greeks translate, Yeshua said, forgive your brother, they missed two words. He never said, forgive your brother, anywhere in the scriptures, or your sister, or your mother, or your father, or yourself. It was never said. But everywhere that it appears he said, forgive your brother, there are two words that need to be added every time, and that is, forgive as to your brother. It's nothing to do with forgiving your brother. But if your unresolved thought disorders are resonated into activity by a goal that you hold for your brother, then you'll make your brain's picture of your brother out of your unresolved pain. And your brother's going to show up literally as a picture in your mind with your pain attached. So recognizing those, and I remember when I first heard this from the Aramaic, it was it was a challenge for me to get what do you mean as to? So here's what that means. If I interact with you and you do something that violates the goal that I hold, and my goal causes my mind to resonate some sort of pain, and I project my pain into my brain into you, there's nothing for me to let you off the hook for, but I apply forgiveness to that energy in me that you brought up in me. So I forgive as to what you've resonated in me and shown me in myself. So forgiveness is learned by you from a teacher other than yourself, who represents that true self in you. Through him or her, you learn how to forgive as to the self you think you made and let it just disappear. Now, remember Yeshua in the ancient teachings, he says, in order for you to live, you've got to die. What he's saying is there's a false self made of thought disorders generated by your mind that you think you are. And that which you think you are is the self that is a reflection of the thought disorders fed to you by your power person. Oh, I'm helpless, I'm hopeless, I'm weak, I'm what, whatever. And again, those thought disorders, the first one handed to most people by their power person is something about how you're broken. And it was a lie. All the power person was doing was passing on their own unresolved brokenness. You're not broken. You, the true you, and this to me is one of the most exciting aspects of this work. It doesn't matter what you've been dragged through. It doesn't matter what horrors, terrors, traumas. It doesn't matter. The truth of who you are is always behind all of that, still shiny, fresh, new, and alive. So, what the course is offering here is, yeah, something outside of your mind, whoever the teacher is that you meet, through them you'll learn how to collapse, to dissolve, to remove, die to the self you think you made, and just let it disappear. That makes room for the truth of your actual being to show up. Thus, this lesson goes on to say, return your mind as one to him who is yourself and who can never sin. The true being that you are as love cannot even, it's like I'm listening to my favorite AM radio station at 900 on the dial. And I get a new stereo, and gee, my FM system sounds so wonderful. And I tune into my FM radio and I try to find 900 from the AM dial. I can turn that dial till the cows come home and it's not going to show up. I can't get that frequency, cannot enter into the FM frequency range. I can't receive 900 from the AM dial on the FM radio. You can't receive sin, quote unquote, energies that are off the mark in your being. It's never touched. It can't be touched by whatever you've gone through, whatever you've been dragged through. So the lesson goes on to say, each unforgiving mind presents you with an opportunity to teach you how to forgive itself. So Somebody shows up in their rage, and you look at them and you go, look at how stupid that rage is. It makes me so mad. Duh. The mad in your mind is a result of your own thought disorders, and it has to be forgiven. Well, that person with that ridiculous belief and those ridiculous behaviors, they hurt me so deeply. Duh. An unforgiving mind has given you an opportunity to teach you how to forgive what's going on inside of you. You're not going to forgive it if you don't see it. That's one of the problems with drugs and alcohol. Because as long as one is drugging themselves, and the most common drug on the planet is dizziness, if over the years I've asked people why they didn't get the worksheets done they were committed to, it was almost always because they were too busy. You got to give up that drug, make a commitment, and make a space to do your work. So each unforgiving mind presents you with an opportunity to teach your own how to forgive as to itself. Each one awaits release from hell through you. Because when you forgive in yourself what this person has resonated in you, all of a sudden that pained energy collapsed in you means that the active presence of love is brought forward in the presence of that other quote unquote unforgiving mind. And that active presence of love in you is a hand reaching help that offers them what the Course calls salvation, resonates in them. Remember the line in the worksheet that says, when I choose love, it wakes up the love in everyone. When you show up as active present love, that active, once you collapse the pained, traumatized mind energy in yourself, you physiologically show up as the presence of love. And when you do that, just like when you hit a middle C tuning fork on the desk, if there's a second middle C tuning fork, that second tuning fork has to start to vibrate. It's got no choice. When you are vibrating in the frequency of love, then it begins through resonance to wake up the love in everyone it touches. So this lesson goes on to say, everyone awaits release from hell through you and turns to you imploringly for heaven here and now. Each unforgiving mind has no hope, but in forgiveness you become its hope. The unforgiving mind must learn through your forgiveness that it has been saved from hell. That is, when you see what a moment ago your mind showed you was the enemy, having collapsed that projection, when you see through the active presence of love, this person has the opportunity to see themselves reflected in your energy. And let's correct this idea of salvation. And of course, uses that word, and it's been totally misused out of the ancient Aramaic and out of the truth. Like there's something in the world that you have to be saved from. Well, the only thing in the world that you need to be saved from is your own disintegrative energies, your own perceptual flaws and constructs. And at the very first moment of your breath, you were given a human life. That human life may have been covered up, but has always remained shiny and new and intact. There's no salvation to be acquired. It was given to you as a free gift from the moment of your first breath. It is always there, waiting to be brought to the forefront. And when you give yourself that gift, when you allow the full, true presence of active love to enter your physiology fully. That is how you teach the world salvation and how you learn it. And this lesson goes on to say, yet all this teaching and your learning will not be of you, but of the teacher who was given you to show the way to you. Today, in this lesson, we practice learning to forgive. If you are willing, you can learn today to take the key to happiness and use it on your own behalf. This lesson 121 from the course, suggests devote 10 minutes in the morning and 10 minutes at night, learning how to give forgiveness and receive it as well. The unforgiving mind does not understand or does not believe that giving and receiving are the same. Today, we will learn that they're one through practicing forgiveness toward one whom you think of as the enemy and one you consider to be a friend. And as you learn to see them both as one, we will extend this lesson to yourself and see that their escape included yours. So this lesson suggests a discipline that you give yourself a practice period and think of someone that you don't like. Someone who brings up irritation for you, someone who you think has caused regret if you meet them. Perhaps the lesson goes on to say one you actively despise or merely try to overlook. It doesn't matter what form your anger takes. Remember that anger is not an emotion, it's an anesthetic. If you meet someone and anger comes up, if you think of someone and anger comes up in you, that someone is resonating what you need to forgive. And anger is the drug you use to hide it from yourself. You want to take it out of hiding. And so you must apply forgiveness to the thought disorders that produce this anesthetic called anger. So the lesson goes on to say, well, you've probably chosen that person already. So hold that person, close your eyes, see him or her in your mind, that person that you've previously despised. See them in your mind. Just observe them. Imagine that they're there and you just kind of move them around in your mind, looking at them from all angles, and work to perceive some light in you. A little glimmer that you've never noticed. Maybe, gee, got such perfectly straight, beautiful teeth. Look for that spark of brightness shining through the ugly picture you hold of him or her. Look at this picture to see that light somewhere within it. And then breathe and imagine that light is extended until it covers him or her fully. Allow a transformation to take place in your perceived picture of this individual until it becomes beautiful and good, flooded with the presence of the being that you are, the presence of love. Look at that changed perception and then turn your mind to someone you call a friend. Allow yourself to transfer the light you learned to see in your former enemy to this friend. Perceive him or her now as more a friend to you, for in that light, his holiness shows you your Savior, saved and saving, healed and whole. And in your imagination, image him. Let that person offer you the light that you see in him. Let your enemy and your friend unite in blessing you with what you've given to them. Allow it to be returned and note that you are one with them and they with you. And then now you have forgiven that false self from you. Remember throughout the day the role forgiveness plays in bringing happiness to every unforgiving mind, with yours among them. Every hour, tell yourself, forgiveness is the key to happiness. I will awaken from the dream that I am mortal, fallible, and full of sin, and know that I am the perfect son or daughter of the Creator whose name is love. Let yourself breathe into that presence of love. Let yourself be that presence of love. And be willing to share your being with all the world. Extending love in your direction and holding a space for each of you to have the best year yet of your eternal life, simply because you deserve it. Thanks for joining us. Have a blessed day. Bye-bye.